I am excluded from the banking system. I am not allowed to participate in the banking system because the banks don't like me because of what I do for a living. I do not have the luxury of having a checking account.
No.
TD, Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, Tangerine, doesn't matter. A small credit union in Alberta has granted me a checking account, and that's it.
Really?
You can't buy a car with Canadian dollar cash. You can't buy a house with Canadian dollar cash. Very interesting that we cannot operate outside the banking system, yet the government has granted the banks the free will to choose who they do and do not do business with.
We saw in February when there was those protests in Ottawa, allegedly the federal government was freezing people's bank accounts if they donated to this GoFundMe.
Not allegedly, that's facts. 2,000 bank accounts were frozen, yeah.
So you talk about the separation of currency and state. It's like we need that now because we're starting to see what this world looks like when we're not in control of our money. Ladies and gentlemen, people of all gender expressions, thank you for checking out the North Bank Media Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Strevens. Now joining me in conversation on this episode today is Mr. Adam O'Brien. He is the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is Canada's first and currently only non-custodial Bitcoin service. Now, if you don't understand what non-custodial means, you might want to listen to this episode and hear what Adam has to say. Let's suffice it to say for now that your bank of choice, very custodial with your money. So Adam brought a hell of a lot of energy and a lot of experience and knowledge around finance or currency, let's say, and of course of Bitcoin itself. I really enjoyed hearing about some of these concepts from him. This idea of Bitcoin being sound money is a better representation of scarcity than, say, a fiat currency. As well, this idea of the separation between currency and state, and Adam's hopes to one day live in a world where that is the case. So I don't want to just go over everything we talked about. This was a power hour. There's a lot of useful information in here. I would say Bitcoin Well, they offer training and information on how to get started and keep going in Bitcoin. They offer advice on how to dollar cost average or to how you can invest some of your savings into Bitcoin. There's ATMs around Edmonton where you can exchange Bitcoin physically. And again, they are non-custodial. They offer a Bitcoin exchange, something of a pass-through. Your Bitcoin never lives with Bitcoin Well, it remains yours. And that's kind of, I think, at the heart of why Bitcoin fits into the North Bank Media Podcast. You know, in a time of institutional oversight and institutional invasion in our private lives, Bitcoin offers perhaps a certain amount of sovereignty and a certain amount of personal control over what is very, very important, that being our financial situation. So if you're interested in getting started on Bitcoin, listen to this episode. It's all right here. Adam did a great job pitching indirectly, but also sharing why he is truly an expert in this sphere. So please, if you enjoy this, it would mean a lot to me if you would share this, pass it on to one other person you might think would enjoy this. And for now, enjoy this one, a great one, a high energy one with something of a flamethrower himself. This is my conversation with Mr. Adam O'Brien.
Let's hit it.
Alrighty. Okay, Adam O'Brien, man, thanks for coming on to the podcast. It's you've been on my radar a little while, so it's good to finally make the connection here, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks. Hey, before I got a question actually. How often do you get people call you Steven instead of Patrick?
Oh, all the time.
People call me Brian constantly, really? And I got an O in front of my name, so that's curious.
There's no excuse, but people can't read these days. I think maybe I don't know.
Too funny. Yes, when I saw your name, just put together like that, I was like, oh, I bet you he's got the same problem.
or they see the first name Patrick and then they see Strevens and they call me Patrick Stevens. It's like, wow.
Dude, I fully thought it was Stevens anyways.
It's okay, man. I didn't
realize it was Strevens.
See? Look at that.
Man.
Oh, man.
I am the problem, dude.
Well, it's okay. I'll forgive you because I think if I piss you off, you're going to get that flamethrower going. So we're going to stay on your good side. Let's go there. Why don't you tell me about that?
Dude, this was a funny one. When Elon did that, I think 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, oh, I gotta, that seems like something I need.
Yes.
And I actually bought 3 of them.
What?
I typically do that with things that I find really cool and that are scarce. I one to sell, one to keep in its box, and then one to use.
Oh, okay.
Done that with sneakers. I've done that with flamethrowers, Pokemon stuff, whatever. And so I am assuming, but I'm pretty confident that I had the first one in Canada because you could. So I bought 3, and then you have like a pickup event, and I flew to LA for the day. I actually vlogged it. It's on my YouTube channel, Adam OB on YouTube. I can flip you the video later if you want. My buddy and I, we flew to LA. We got there like 10 o'clock. We picked up the flamethrower at 1 o'clock. I was back in Vancouver at like 7:30 or 8.
Wow.
And I was going through customs, and they super didn't like it. The Canadian customs are like pretty brutal. But it said not a flamethrower on the box. And after like a half hour of arguing with the guy, that's what he came to. He was like, well, the box says it's not a flamethrower, so we're going to let it go. And he stamped it. And I like ran out of there. I was like, I'm gone.
It's clearly a flamethrower.
Very clearly a flamethrower. I don't know how you could mistake this for much else.
Anything else?
But,
yeah.
And I would put it off. I put it off though about a year ago on another show, and it wasn't it wasn't good. So. Okay,
I won't ask you to do that. Maybe some other time when I come over.
Yeah. When you're in the office, you can we can go play with the flamethrower and see who gets burnt least.
That sounds great to me. Holy, that's hilarious stuff, man. You know, I would say before we start too was Alicia Thompson first brought you to my attention, and then it was Rod Maldaner who finally made the connection. So thanks to the network, man. That's the beauty of this life, man, is the other people in it.
100%, man. I think too, it's why you want to try to be just a good human being. You know, like I think that I've come across lots of people that don't seem to care about the next year. They just care about the present. And I think that's it's an important thing to keep to just stay on top of, right?
No, that's well said, man. It's you got to live. It's a weird place to be, but you have to balance the past, present, and future, and how you approach life and business and everything. Right? Is like the next step is informed by the last step, right? You got to see
totally. I've actually seen this really good, Instagram quote, a couple of different times now, where it's like something about people thinking the past could change the present, but they don't understand that the present can change the future.
Interesting.
And I that like really got my brain moving a little bit, because everyone's like, oh, if I had done this 5 years ago, the present would be different. But it's very common to not assume like, oh, if I do this now, then in 5 years, I'll presumably be better off. So it's like buying Bitcoin.
There you go.
If you buy that's actually very common in Bitcoin. Like, oh yeah, if I would have bought it 5 years ago, I'd be rich. And it's like, well, why not buy it today? And then in 5 years.
That's a great point, man. It's like, yeah, you get so stuck on what you didn't do, but it's like, well, stop here. Now you're still empowered to act right now in the present. And
totally.
It's, now patience is an important part of that, but let me ask patience you that. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say patience and time preference. I've been studying this concept of time preference for the last year. And it's basically like are you impulsive or are you future looking?
Okay.
And, impulsive people but like with high time preference, you generally have a more stable, high, like over time, high growth life, I would say.
Interesting. If you're more, so time preference is more just like accepting.
So you want to have a low time preference,
okay.
meaning you do not value present time as much as you value future time. Like for example, if I told you I'll give you $100 today or $101 in a year, you'd say, well, I'll take $100 today because who knows if you'll be around? Who knows if the $1, whatever.
Right.
It's not worth it. But if I said I'll give you $100 today or $1 million in a year, you'd say, oh, well, I'll gamble and take the $1 million in a year. And then how far back does that scale? Is it 200? Is it 500? Right. Is it 1,000? And then flip that into assets like, I'll trade, and specifically with Bitcoin, I'll trade my Bitcoin for a Ferrari today. Well, do you want a Ferrari today, or do you want, what do you want in 10 years? Or do you want like generational wealth in 30 years?
Sure.
And then how do you balance that together? I don't know why I said Ferrari. Lambo is crypto culture.
Yeah, totally. The Lambros.
I'm getting old here, but
well, hey, I don't mind the Ferrari. Do you, in your mind, is the ceiling with Bitcoin? Have we not seen it yet? Do you see it as a thing that's just got miles to go yet, value wise?
So I'm I am so philosophically deep into Bitcoin that it doesn't have a it doesn't have a monetary value. It has a time value. And we are all very used to valuing our time in like Canadian dollars or US dollars or rubles or whatever. And therefore we like over the span of our life, our time gets more valuable because we get more experience, we get more educated, we become smarter, we become professionals, whatever. But I think we're being tricked is that also like the return that we get for our time, the actual dollar becomes less valuable. And so we have this like kind of doubling up that happens. And in Bitcoin, like we've only ever seen Bitcoin get more expensive year over year. And I say more expensive, but what I mean is more valuable, right? We only ever see Bitcoin get more and more valuable. And so it's not so much like how much Bitcoin can I get with my money, but it's what is my time worth in Bitcoin? And when you ask yourself that, it's like your time gets less and less valuable, which means like holding Bitcoin becomes very, very, very important for the longevity of your life, longevity of your wealth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to answer your question, like, no, we've not seen a ceiling on Bitcoin because I don't believe there is a ceiling because our time will always be worth something. I had this discussion with someone the other day. They were like, well, if it's capped and there's a set amount with no opportunity to grow, then the billionaires will just all hoard it and there'll be nothing for anyone else. Right. And my response was, well, but like you'll still have time. Like Bitcoin is not valuable. You're trading your time for that Bitcoin, right? Your labor. Like if you're a cattle farmer and the billionaire wants to eat meat, then like presumably they will have to give you something for your time, for the effort that you put in on the beef. Same thing if they want a house, if they want clothing, if they want to watch a movie, if they want to, drive a Ferrari or a Lambo. They're like Bitcoin is not what's valuable. It's the way that it reflects the time that you've traded for that Bitcoin. And so it has a ceiling as much as your time does, which like everyone has the same amount of time. What we do with it is obviously very, very, very different. And of course there's like luck and a ton of other factors involved. And like, I'm not trying to get here a political debate. No, more what I'm saying is like, philosophically speaking, there's no ceiling on Bitcoin because it's simply a representation of your labor. And I think that with that mindset, it's different than the Canadian dollar because the Canadian dollar is not a good representation of your labor because your labor gets more valuable over time and the Canadian dollar gets less valuable over time.
And it gets less valuable just through inflation, you're saying, like devaluation of currency over time?
Yeah, exactly. Like you think right now, today, if you had $100 in your bank, it's now worth 99.5 cents this month, 99 cents the next month. And by December, it'll be worth 92 cents, like in purchasing power. Right. And people are like, well, that's true, but at least I still have one full dollar. It's like, yes, but it buys you 8% less groceries, 8% less house, 8% less car, 80% less gas. Like, there's like, you don't get as much value for what you've traded your time for. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets money. Money cannot come into existence or should not be able to come into existence without somebody having traded time for it. Right. And there's different variables in that statement. But at the end of the day, original value comes from time, comes from labor, comes from spending your expertise, your time, your physical labor to give somebody else value. And the only reason we have money, I think Elon Musk said this, is to escape the nuance of barter. Like you have a podcast and let's say I wanted to advertise on that podcast, which is funny because maybe, but whatever.
Hey, if you do, let me know.
I'll hit you up. But like, I would say, okay, well, my only thing that I can do is plant trees. So do you want trees? You would say no. And then I would say, oh, well, then I guess I can't provide my value for what you give me value for. So we can't do business. So we need this intermediary of like, oh, I'll trade my trees to whoever else, get this token and give you that token that you can then go and give to other people. It's like, it creates this nice, beautiful, harmonious economy. Yeah. And that's why we have money, because barter is inefficient and barter sucks. But the Canadian, we've got away from that. And now we have money just because people think having money is good, and they don't understand that the value of money is not from owning it. It's from actually having value with your time.
Right. And what it represents as the time. And time is the one thing we're not getting any more of, right? So
the ultimate scarcity, man. It's the ultimate known scarcity. Like, how much time do you have today? I bet it's about 24 hours.
Yeah. If I'm lucky, you know.
Right. Otherwise, it's like hard stop.
Right.
And so Bitcoin mimics that scarcity because we know how much Bitcoin there will ever be.
Right.
We know how much time we have in a day. And you want to accumulate as much time as possible. Right. Why do we talk about retirement? Like, let's think about what retirement is. It's like, I want to stop trading my time for value. I want to have enough value in my bank, in my possession, that I no longer have to trade time on a daily basis to be able to eat, to be able to sleep, to be able to enjoy myself.
Right.
And we know everyone's got 24 hours. It's like, how valuable can you make that 24 hours? And then how do you put it into a unit of account that everyone else will find value in?
So we've accelerated to the second page of my notes already, which is...
Oh, sorry, dude.
That's okay. No, I love it. I love it because I was going to do the whole, explain to me what Bitcoin well does. But I mean, you have a website. It doesn't matter. People can go to that website. So do you see Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation? And is there a world where Bitcoin is the common currency, or is there too much power in the central banks in fiat currency where, a mainstream shift to blockchain is just not going to happen? What do you, like, in your heart of hearts, how do you come out on that?
Man, it's a really good question. I feel like ultimately the best thing for society, for the individuals in the world, is to have a money that is outside of the state. And when you hear that, you're like, wow, that's kind of weird. Money's always been with the state. But then you think back to, like, let's think back to the saying, the separation of church and state. And for you and I, it's like, that's a good saying. Everyone knows kind of what it represents. But like, our ancestors, church and state were the same thing. There was literally, like, the church was the state.
True.
And the separation of church and state was a massive movement that like was not in the benefit of the state, was not in the benefit of the church, presumably. And then the split happened out of the demand for the people and out of what was ultimately best and better for the people. And I feel like, I hope that my grandkids, they're saying is the separation of money and state. And they're like, can you believe the government used to actually dictate what happened with money? Like, can you believe what a chaos that was? And isn't this so much better now? And I feel like that's what Bitcoin has the opportunity to do, is that in the same way we separated church and state, I feel like we can separate money and state with the power of Bitcoin from there. Now, there's going to be opposition to it, probably, I would assume. But I think that Bitcoin gives enough power to the individual that it makes governments, it puts them in competition with each other. And if one government gets a little bit silly and tries to do something stupid with Bitcoin, it's going to open up an opportunity for another government to presumably make the right decisions and allow that free market to thrive.
That's kind of what I'm hoping too. And that's well said. I just, like you say, there's going to be opposition. I wonder, could that opposition be so strong and so stern that, is there maybe room on a personal level for each individual to make their way through Bitcoin and just say, yes, fiat currency and the state will never be divorced, but I can empower myself through crypto or through alternate currency? Is that maybe that's a start down that road? I
mean, that's what's happening right now, right? Like, I mean, you asked what Bitcoin well does. We literally make it possible for people to buy, sell, and use Bitcoin. That's our mandate. We want to make it as easy to interact with Bitcoin as it is to interact with your money. And so coupling the like modern banking convenience with the powers of Bitcoin, we say the security and the benefits of Bitcoin. What that means though is the power of Bitcoin is our mandate. So like if you were a Bitcoin only podcast, you only took Bitcoin, you still have to live. You got to pay your power bill. You got to pay rent or mortgage. You got to, and so you could literally then decide, well, I'm making about this much Bitcoin a month, and I need to, pay these people, pay this power bill, whatever. You would decide, okay, is that worth parting with my Bitcoin, or do I want to just do that myself? And then you get into that time preference game again of like, well, if this much Bitcoin is going to be worth more in the future, or more of my time in the future, do I want to trade that today, or do I want to trade that later on? So anyways, back to your question. I do feel like there is an opportunity for individuals to hold their wealth in Bitcoin, have it be usable. Like you can pay virtually any bill on our website. You can buy gift cards, you can sell Bitcoin, get money in your bank. Like you can literally live on Bitcoin at bitcoinwell.com. There's a plug. And I think that the opportunity exists for individuals to make that decision. Now, where opposition could come in is they could say holding Bitcoin yourself is illegal. That's what they're trying to do in Europe right now.
Really? Of course.
EU is trying to ban self-custodied Bitcoin wallets, which would be a detriment to Bitcoin.
Well, it'd be a detriment to the average person, which is kind of what governments are all about, I feel.
I'm going to stay political on that
That's
one.
Okay.
But, yeah, I know.
yeah, there you go. For the listeners, he's anyway.
Yeah, but then like, a group like El Salvador might say, nah, we like self-custody of Bitcoin. All you Europeans that care about that, why don't you come to El Salvador? Come bring your tax dollars, come bring your fruits of your labor, come bring your GDP contribution to our nation. And that's how nations are born and rebuilt, is by governments seeing opportunities and trying to entice a certain type and certain group of people in there. I don't know if the El Salvador experiment is going to work. I don't even know if I fully believe it's a good thing for Bitcoin. But what I do know is that there are governments that are currently taking different stances to Bitcoin, which is 100% Bitcoin's mandate.
There you go. There you go. And when you say the El Salvador experiment, did they make that their premium prime form of currency? Like,
I don't think it's legal tender.
Gotcha.
Meaning, it's not a financial instrument like it is in Canada. It's taxed. It's like if you've got like your time is taxed in everywhere, right?
Of course.
You spend your time, you receive value, and you have to pay part of that value. That's because your time is taxed. Your assets are taxed in Canada as well. And they've made Bitcoin in El Salvador such that it's equivalent to like, the dollar.
Gotcha.
It's legal tender. Everywhere has to accept legal tender in a nation, which makes Bitcoin hyper usable in that state.
Gotcha. And so, by the way, in Canada, like if I hold whatever amount of Bitcoin in a wallet and I then cash out for actual currency, Canadian dollar, am I taxed on those gains?
Yeah, it's taxed as capital gains.
Gotcha.
So it's the exact same as if you buy a rental property or you buy let's say you just buy a parking lot and it sits empty and you sell it in 5 years for more money, you get taxed on the difference, which is called capital gains, which is basically a 50% tax of half the gain. So it's basically a 25% tax of the gain. Okay,
that's good to know. I was curious. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry to cut you off
No.
again. I think I've cut you off 3 times already.
I don't mind.
Going for record 8.
There you go. Keep it going.
The capital gains tax could change. And like we've seen taxes change recently, and we will continue to, like right now, insurance policies, life insurance policies, and inheritance are getting like absolutely wrecked in the tax market. And I feel like I don't know why home ownership won't follow that suit. Like already we're seeing this narrative that if you own a home, you're rich. And we know that rich people have to get taxed because they're rich and evil. Right. And so I think that the idea of home ownership will be taxed quite heavily in the future. Like I'm talking more than just property taxing. And then I think that Bitcoin will follow suit in short-sighted, less free market focused nations.
Right. And do you put Canada on that list? Maybe right now?
Yeah, I think, I mean, what's Canada doing with life insurance? What's Canada doing with income tax? What's Canada doing with estate tax? What's Canada doing with, Canada well over printed money the last 2 years. It's got to come from somewhere, right? Like we got a pile of debt now. Where is it going to come from?
Well, I don't know. That's the problem. I don't see how this ends in I don't see a nice soft landing for us here, truly.
No.
So, but But again, one thing I've been talking about on this show is the way in which these big social issues, these political issues, such as the economy, for instance, that's like you or I have very little control over that. But what we do have control over is our own actions. So I guess I'm curious, like when someone comes to you with wanting to get into crypto, what do you tell them? Like, what can you reasonably tell them to do from day one? But it has to be a mindset shift too, right? It sounds like.
So it's, I think that it can happen gradually. I say day one, 2.1% of your net worth should be in Bitcoin, period. It is not enough to bankrupt anyone, but it is absolutely enough to like see some serious, like, holy smokes, this was the right move in like less than a decade. So I think that is like 100% should be, this is financial advice.
Okay.
Very like, I'm being fairly facetious. My lawyer was in this room. He'd be like, nope, cut that out.
Yeah, I was going to make a disclaimer before we did this. I'll do it right now. This is not financial advice. This is a conversation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you covered my ass there.
There you go.
But the like, what I tell them when that question gets asked is 2.1% of your net worth should be in Bitcoin. And then after that, I say, pick a number. Everyone has savings or should have savings, right? Does 10% of your weekly allowance go into savings, 20%, 30%, whatever it is, and then pick a fraction of that amount of savings to go into Bitcoin and treat it like savings.
Right.
So Bitcoin is not an investment. Bitcoin needs to be looked at like savings. And what I mean by that is you accumulate savings until you need it and until you want to spend it on something else. And that's either in an emergency or in a pleasure state. There is no other reason to use savings other than I want to go on a trip or my sump pump broke and I need to fix it.
Sure.
Those are like, it's emergency or it's pleasure. And that's why you have savings. That's why you use savings.
Gotcha.
And so I feel like treating Bitcoin like savings is the right move. You accumulate it until you need and or want to spend it. Versus
an investment is something you hope will mature down the road where you can.
An investment has an exit price.
Sure.
An investment is a gamble, right? Let's be honest.
Okay, sure.
Like when you go to the blackjack table, you invest $100 and hope to walk away with 200. And if you get to 0, you have to walk away. But if you're at 20, you're like, oh, I can probably get this back to 100, right? Like, and that's the mindset. And then if you're up to 500, if you're up, like, nobody walks in to the casino without like the mindset of like, I'm going to make money, or I'm going to lose all of this. Those are the two realities.
Your two options. Yeah. That's interesting.
And so when you have those mindsets, it's very different than I'm going to accumulate something until I need it.
Okay. And so then there's your thing with Bitcoin is that like it's less of a gamble than Bitcoin in your mind.
Yeah. Like over time, the concept of sound money holds true. And it has since the dawn of time. We've needed intermediaries of value that are scarce, that are divisible, that are transferable, that are fungible, all these properties of sound money that we want to attribute our value or that we want to interact with to show our value. And Bitcoin captures and embodies those principles of sound money, which makes it more like a savings tool than an investing tool.
Gotcha. Okay, that's great stuff.
I would say that crypto, like I call it the crypto casino. Okay. I think that saving Bitcoin is much different than investing in ETH or Dogecoin. Maybe gambling in ETH or in Dogecoin is what I should be saying here, because there is nothing on planet Earth that models sound money better than Bitcoin, which then flip that statement on its head. Everything other than Bitcoin is not a good representation of sound money. And so if you want to save sound money, presumably you would save Bitcoin. And if you want a way to make a quick buck, then you want to go to the gambling markets. You want to go to the crypto casino, the fiat casino, if you will, etc.
Now, what is it specifically that makes Bitcoin so sound, even compared to those other cryptocurrencies that are kind of funny money?
Primarily the decentralization of it. Bitcoin is like fully decentralized. There is no one single group or no one single person at the helm. And you cannot make a change to Bitcoin without majority consensus. So I think that's like the primary function. Now, what that drives though, like who cares? That's like, doesn't really matter other than you cannot change the amount. The scarcity at the root is what gives Bitcoin every other crypto on planet Earth, with the exception, no, actually there's no exceptions there, are either not scarce, meaning there's an unlimited supply, which is the same like fiat currency, except you have an unelected party at the helm of it, which sucks. Or there's a party at the helm. There's somebody that's making the decisions. So let's say like, there's a cap on this coin. What do you mean? Okay, well, what's the process to change that cap? Oh, I wake up one day and want to change the cap and then flip a switch and it's changed. And it's like, well, that's not good. That's not how you store value. Right? Now there's value props for other coins. There's certain things that are good about other coins, but they don't embody sound money. They're not savings in that way. It's more like investing in a company, investing in a mission, investing in a vision for the future, but it's not an asset. It's more of an investment.
How far are we from mining all this Bitcoin? Do we know?
Yeah, like 120 years away. So in 2140, the last Bitcoin will be mined, which is crazy because
it is
over 19 million of the capped 21 million have already been mined. So you think about the last 13 years, have had 19 million mined, and it's going to take us 120 to mine 2 million, which is because it is a decreasing rate of supply. This is what gives it its deflationary nature. In the early days, 50 Bitcoin were introduced to the market every 10 minutes. Today, it's 6.125 Bitcoin being introduced to the market every 10 minutes. So the same amount of work, the same amount of value being traded to bring Bitcoin into existence. But 12 years ago, you got 50. And today you get 6. And that's what drives the price up, because the work required to bring Bitcoin into existence is the same, right? Or today it's actually more work. You need to do more work, but you're getting less of the asset, which means the asset is worth more of your time.
Sure. And that's what drives it up in value, correct?
Theoretically, yeah. That coupled with market sentiment and all kinds of other things.
Have you been to the Bitcoin convention in Miami?
Yeah, of course. That's a great place to be.
Oh, right on. One of my favorite podcasters, Tim Dillon, did a live episode from there, and that was maybe 2 years ago. That was when I really started thinking about Bitcoin as an opportunity for me. And now I hold a little bit of pure Bitcoin, but I also hold Bitcoin in an ETF, like as an equity. What are your thoughts on those? For the average person, a Bitcoin ETF, is it worth it, or is it really just?
So it's worth it as much as you trust the fiat system. A Bitcoin ETF, like there's two functions of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Deflationary money and then user custody. And deflationary money means number go up. That's what Bitcoin means, right? Price goes up. And that in an ETF makes sense. That's all fine and dandy. But user custody means I can own and control this myself. You have zero access to your ETF, period.
It's true.
Right? You've got to call a broker, who's got to call a stock market, who's got to call a transfer agent to unwind that position. And that happens pretty good if the internet's working, if the website's working, that's all fine. But you don't have any access to it, period. Right. So if Saturday afternoon you needed some cash and the only functioning cash that you had was in the ETF, that'd be a problem. So if it's not good as your last resort, what's it good for? And you're going to miss out on some tax breaks. You're going to miss out on maybe some it's not as easy to buy Bitcoin natively as it is to hold it in ETF. But like ETFs are derived because people wanted to hold complex assets simply. Yeah. And Bitcoin, like once you know how to use it, is very, very easy to hold. And there's not really a reason to hold it in an ETF if you want the benefits of Bitcoin outside of number go up. Number go up, right? Which, let me tell you, it hasn't gone up. Yeah, right now it's number go down. Yeah, number go down in a bad way. But yeah. Interestingly enough, people talk about the high, right? They talk about the yearly high, and the yearly high of 2022 is like 60 grand. 2021 is like 60-ish, 2020 was 30, like da. But if you flip that and talk about yearly low, what is the lowest price of Bitcoin year over year? This year, it's $28,000 USD. The next highest yearly low, so meaning the lowest that Bitcoin got previously was $2,800. So wow, in every single year, Bitcoin has been $2,800 or cheaper. And this year, it's only ever been $28,000, which is like a very, very interesting concept and kind of spins that perception on its head of like, wow, 16 months ago, this thing was 24 months ago, this thing was $2,400 or $2,800. And now it's crashed to 37,000, you know, at a zoomed out look, right? That's still pretty good when you compare it to like, you know, how does that look in housing? How does that look in gold? How does that look in the stock market? You're looking at a 10-year look. Bitcoin is bar none the best performing asset on planet Earth over 10 years. And I think that the mantra that Bitcoin is dead because it's only worth 37 grand is hilarious to a kid like me that watched Bitcoin crash to $300 and thought the same thing. So I would say, you know, zoom out a little bit and you kind of see how this market stays whole.
That's really good advice. That's going out as a clip on its own, probably. You're bullish on Bitcoin. I think that's fair to say. Now, you built your whole business around it, around that proposition, right? I guess I'm curious, what do you do to, I mean, you surely as just a person, a human being operating in the world, you're aware of risk with any asset, right? Well, how do you hedge against that in your daily life outside of crypto? Like, what are some things, like, is there a small fudge factor in your mind where it's like, yes, this could fail me? Or not?
No, I manage this risk very poorly because I don't really believe there is much risk.
That's fair.
So no. That's. I will say I do own a house, and like that's probably the capacity of my like diversification. No worries. My net worth is held in Bitcoin and in like the organization that I'm lucky enough to run. There's not much else out there for me. And so I think that like that time preference has been something that I've been exploring. Like I did in the past. I've done the investments, I've done the stock market. I do have some gold, and silver, I suppose, more out of just like I had bought it previously and now still have it. And then I do have some like shoes and Pokemon cards from like this era of my life where I was like very excited about collectible street culture type things. So I mean, I guess maybe like if that contributes to net worth in any sane person's mind, then sure. But I definitely do not think that what I do is very risky. I think it has short-term volatility. But I think that when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I got a pile of kids that are, you know, in their 20s and 30s, I'm pretty confident of how this is going to shake out.
I'm glad to hear it. That's giving me some confidence to go a little further with it myself. Now, I use Binance, but should I come over to Bitcoin Well? Here's your chance to pitch Bitcoin Well.
So here's the difference. And this is a very distinct difference that probably nobody on the surface really cares about. But when I ask you certain questions, all paths lead towards using a platform like Bitcoin Well. So Binance is a custodial exchange, meaning you need to send them money.
Yes.
They then allow you access and they grant you the ability to trade, to buy that Bitcoin. And then you have to request and they have to grant your permission to withdraw that Bitcoin. So that's the relationship, is you give them money and then you're like reasonably certain that they are going to give you that money back. With Bitcoin Well, we are a direct to consumer platform, meaning at no point in time do we ever hold your money. In fact, right now, if you make an account at bitcoinwell.com, you can send an Interac e-transfer and you will have Bitcoin in your wallet in like 100 seconds. We're working really hard to get it down to 97 seconds because Connor McDavid is the fastest hockey player on earth. And we already are the fastest Bitcoin platform in the country, but making it 97 seconds would be really, really awesome.
That would be.
So we're working on that. But right now you can literally snap your fingers and buy Bitcoin. And in fact, with Interac e-transfer specifically, you don't even have to log in. Once you make your first purchase, the Bitcoin address that you've sent your Bitcoin to in the past that's then locked and tied to your profile. And if you send an Interac e-transfer to that email address in the future, you receive Bitcoin automatically. You don't even have to log into the platform. Wow. You can simply just keep sending $50, $100, up to $3,000. Maybe it's only $1,000 actually. It's whatever the e-transfer limits are. And then you can receive Bitcoin directly to your Bitcoin wallet, hopefully to your hardware wallet, which is where you have your savings, where you have your storage of Bitcoin. Gotcha. So that's like 100%. I think like that is bar none the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin. Right now, it's the cheapest way too. It's only $1 for a fee. So it's really, really like fastest, safest, and cheapest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada. Yes.
Yes. I'm coming over. I'm coming over next week. All right.
And then the other way to buy Bitcoin is dollar cost average. So you could dollar cost average manually with what you like, just send an e-transfer and do it every 2 weeks and off you go, or you can automate that. And the way to automate that is with our Bitcoin savings plan. And so you would set up your account. You would simply say, I want $50 every 2 weeks to come out of my bank and have Bitcoin sent to my wallet. And voila, every 2 weeks, just like a car payment, we pull $50 out of your bank and we send Bitcoin directly to you at that same time. So we're really, really rethinking the wheel at how can consumers buy Bitcoin in the fastest and safest way possible, which is, again, coupling the convenience of modern banking with the benefits of Bitcoin.
Because the modern bank really made it easy for us to give them our money.
Dude, it is so easy.
So easy.
Send money to a friend, pay my Visa bill, tap at the grocery store. Like, it is so easy to use your money right now. The problem is if you do something the bank doesn't like, they can shut you out and you don't have access to that money.
Now, is that where the hardware wallet comes in? Because I see a dystopian future where there's a digital currency that's connected to my vaccine passport and my social credit score. And if I make somebody mad, the government says, you actually don't have as much as you thought you did this week, Patrick. Is that where the hardware wallet?
That's the future. It's a very real future with the central bank digital currency. A CBDC gives the government the full power and control to be able to do that. I'm inherently against CBDCs. People have the misunderstanding that a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, is the same as Bitcoin. It is very, very, very different from Bitcoin.
Central.
And should be looked at very fearfully. There is no benefit to an individual to having a CBDC, period. And I would welcome anyone to challenge me on that statement. And after a 10-minute conversation, that person will have changed their mind or just be an illogical human, which is
plenty of those
fine.
out there. Yeah.
But they exist. So the hardware wallet is the safest way to store Bitcoin. There are two main kinds of Bitcoin wallets. There is like a mobile wallet and a hardware wallet. And I'm getting kind of, that's not like super true, but let's just like take that. There's like warm, like hot and cold wallets are the two kinds. And the most popular type of hot wallet is mobile. The most popular type of cold wallet is a hardware wallet. And so a mobile wallet is like cash in your pocket, a little bit on your phone that you can walk around with. It's good for testing things. It's good for like sending to your pal, whatever. Hardware wallet is like locked deep in a fireproof safe somewhere that is obscure. You're never going to lose it. You're never going to worry about it going missing or getting stolen. And that's where your savings go. That's like in a perfect world, man. In my perfect world, my hardware wallet gets opened up by my kids when I die. And it's like, great, we're good for the next 5 or 6 generations. That's nice. That's the hope. That's the dream for hardware wallets, is that they're not, that's your savings, right? Like, why do you have savings? Pleasure or emergency? Hopefully you can enjoy yourself, but hopefully you can live within a certain lifestyle that you can enjoy yourself with still saving. And that's kind of the goal of a hardware wallet, is like use it when you need to. And therefore it should be a little bit inconvenient to access. Like have it in your nightstand, where the cleaner can just open up and take it is like not where the hardware wallet goes, right? It's like, no, you have that buried somewhere that's going to be maintained and kept safe.
Gotcha. And so then does my Bitcoin live on the Bitcoin Well exchange or no?
Never.
Never.
Never, ever, ever. There is no way that you can leave Bitcoin at Bitcoin Well, period. I don't believe in that.
Okay.
So we have a wallet called Well Wallet. You can download it at wellwallet.ca. That's fully like that's your own Bitcoin wallet. We have no access to it. We've used 3 different types of open source technology to build the wallet side, and then from there you can integrate with like the Interac transfer and things like this. But the actual art of storing Bitcoin on the mobile wallet that is Well Wallet is fully yours. Like at no point in time, basically, if you transact with us and then we disappear, all your coins are safe. If you interact with Binance and Binance disappears, all your coins are gone.
Gone. Which could well happen.
Coinbase actually, just a few weeks ago, they highlighted that all of the customer funds that are in custody at Coinbase are subject to seizure if Coinbase goes bankrupt, which is
that's a problem.
Scary.
Yeah, I
think it's a problem too.
That's not cool at all. So that it's like it's not your money then at all, really.
No.
Just like when you put money in the bank, it's not truly yours because they're lending it out 9 times or whatever.
Yeah, I think they have a mandate to keep 3% per dollar deposited.
Now I noticed.
Quite low.
Well, yeah, no surprises there. There's a big part of what Bitcoin Well does too is educate people. It sounds like. So I am just curious, like brass tacks. Different revenue streams for you guys. Obviously, you take money on the Bitcoin transfers. You have Bitcoin ATMs. Is the education component a revenue stream for you guys too?
No, that's a money suck.
It's a money suck. Yeah, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite of revenue stream. But I think it's important to the society that we live in. I think it's important to educate people on why Bitcoin exists.
Right.
We developed the Bitcoin Academy in partnership with a local university in Alberta called Athabasca University.
Okay.
And it's free. It's free to take. We spend a lot of money on producing that, and it kind of walks through the history of Bitcoin, the history of money, why Bitcoin exists, the difference between custody and user or self or non-custodial, the different ways to buy Bitcoin, the different kind of wallets that exist. That's huge. And then we also have a twice a month course called Bitcoin for Beginners, where our Bitcoin specialists just have a live stream and they talk about Bitcoin. They educate Bitcoin. We have a beautiful presentation that we kind of run through, and then there's an opportunity for a Q&A after as well. So education is a big part of our brand, and it's important. I think it's important for like the ecosystem, but also we want to show you what it's like to be in a Bitcoin world, in the Bitcoin standard. What does that mean? And give you all the info so that you're prepared to, make a purchase or not. And like, I don't want you to buy Bitcoin if you don't want to buy Bitcoin. It's not, I think it would be silly not to want to buy Bitcoin, but like, it's not up for me to decide. It's not my time that I'm trading for Bitcoin. It's, you got to make a decision to trade the value that you've created with your time into Bitcoin.
Well, that's a major difference right there, is like we don't really have a choice in this country to operate outside of the Canadian dollar. Whereas with Bitcoin, immediately there's a choice, period.
And actually, there's an even further disconnect where we don't have a choice to interact with the banking system, but the banks can choose who they do or do not let into their system. For example, I am excluded from the banking system. I am not allowed to participate in the banking system because the banks don't like me because of what I do for a living.
Really?
I do not have the luxury of having a checking account.
No.
TD, Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, Tangerine, doesn't matter. I do not get the luxury. I have a small credit union in Alberta has granted me a checking account, and that's it.
Really?
But like until that credit union came to the table, you can't buy things, like you can't buy a car with Canadian dollar cash. You can't buy a house with Canadian dollar cash. So it's very interesting that we cannot operate outside the banking system, yet the government has granted the banks the free will to choose who they do and do not do business with. If you're homeless, you do not get a bank account because you don't have an address. You need an address to have a bank account. So we've oh, homeless people, we should give them all this stuff. Start with a bank account, man.
Start with
giving them the opportunity to earn money.
Yeah.
Like
that's a
crazy, man.
That's a great point. And now I know we're not going to get too political, but we saw in February when there was those protests in Ottawa, allegedly the federal government was freezing people's bank accounts if they donated to this GoFundMe. I don't know how true that was.
Not allegedly. That's facts. 2,000 bank accounts were frozen. Yeah.
So you talk about the separation of currency and state. It's like we need that now because we're starting to see what this world looks like when we're not in control of our value, of our money.
Dude, and like Freedom Convoy aside, like how about the citizens of Russia right now? Like the single mom who had her savings in Russian ruble at the Russian bank account, like she was brought up and told to do all of her life, is now incapable of interacting at no fault of her own. She's got a dickhead. What is he a president or he's got a dickhead dictator?
He's a dictator. Yeah.
That is at the helm, and the whole world locks down the entire financial system. That is the result of money and state being married. Is that you get sanctioned, or your country gets sanctioned, and you have no access to the outside world. What if, like, think about Ed was like hot on Trump's heels. He's got his finger on the nuclear war button, If that button gets pushed, US sanctions get imposed. What does that mean for the 300, 400 million citizens of USA with US dollars? Like,
I think we know
about it is so reckless to be fully trusting that the world will appreciate your government and that your government will appreciate you forever. That is reckless, in my opinion.
I think it's even more than reckless, but it's reckless for sure. It's so this is what the revelations I've had doing this podcast have been about how little I know and how little I have control over. But what I do have control over, I have to be very disciplined in controlling it. And that's my own personal autonomy, right? And that's why I love this idea of Bitcoin. I don't know enough about it, but let me throw this at you. I think that the financial sector is full of people who purposefully mystify things. They make things out to be more complicated than they are. Does that seem accurate to you?
Yeah, big time. The internet has wiped out the need for like a lot of banking jobs,
right?
And a lot of financial jobs, and like the stock market used to close because the brokers would have to like tally up all the trades and then make balances at the end of like all night. The stock market was busy because from close until open, they were balancing the previous day. And like, there's no reason for that. And in fact, I heard actually one of our product team told me this just this week. Bitcoin has had more cumulative trading time than the New York Stock Exchange has. And Bitcoin's only been around for 12 years because it never turns off, because it's open 24/7, 365.
Right.
And that's an interesting concept that like, well, if Bitcoin can be traded that way, why can't stocks? And, there's like emotional reasons behind that. And, if money never slept truly, then that would be problematic for our society. But it is absolutely kept mystified for the benefits of making it seem too complex. Now, Bitcoin has the reverse problem. People assume it's complex because it's new and because all other money is like complex. So this alternative money must be complex. And our job is like the reverse. Our job is to show people, hey, this is really easy. Here's some free education. Here's a ton of other resources that you can go learn about it on. And then if you want to try some, then use Bitcoin. Go ahead.
So now you don't trade in stocks per se at all, it sounds like, but
other than like I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company, so
fair enough.
Yes, I do by that respect for sure.
Okay, gotcha. But I guess I'm curious. It's like the other side of the coin. There is like when it comes to things like Quest Trade and Wealth Simple and all that. It's empowering people to. But is it almost illusory? How like is it an illusion that okay, yes, you are making the trade, but your money is still going into something that you have no control over.
Yeah, your money is going into something that you have no control over, and you're also you're relying on Wealth Simple. Like, so for stocks and things, it's like that's an obvious, really good way to buy stocks is through self-directed platforms, low fee, fairly like very user friendly, good customer support, That's all fine. Buying derivatives of hard assets You're just trusting that they're giving you valid price exposure to that hard asset, which is problematic. Like I remember, and not to look down on other people in the industry, but like Wealthsimple ran a campaign that you could withdraw your Bitcoin. Like that's like the bank running a campaign being like, hey, you can now withdraw your money.
Right.
It's like, what? Yeah. How is this not like, that's where you start. Like you don't like, what? How is that even a marketing campaign? That's like a basic. It's like okay, everyone, you can eat food now. You can drink water. It's like, what kind of world are we living in that owning your money is some kind of marketing campaign? This is atrocious. But
that's why I wonder if it's not some kind of shift, if they're trying to shift us away as a population to this idea of like, well, your money, it's not really yours, Like,
dude, we're there, man. We're shifting. Yeah. Like lots of people, when Bitcoin comes up, they're like, oh, well, what if I lose it? And it's like, dude, and people that are like running businesses say this. It's like, if you're responsible for 45 people, you have 2 children, you have a house, you have a cabin, you have 3 cars, like somehow you find a way to look after all of those things. Presumably you can handle a hardware wallet that stores generational wealth. Like how is this not an important thing to try and learn how to do and realize? It's like, well, someone else can do it for me. Like, yeah, sure, someone else can raise your kids if you want to, but like,
look how that's going to turn out.
We're not opting for that.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. Again, not to be political, but it seems like in this, well, maybe we'll just forget that, but let's not. We've had such a nice time. Let's not go off this road that we're on.
Off the rails.
But so it is like a blind spot, right? Where people, like you say, you manage your whole life, but you're just kind of trusting that your money is looked after.
Yeah, well, you're looked after, then that it's going to be there. Like,
right.
Up until 2 years ago, when I told people that banks have frozen my money for months, I have no access to my money. I have to go in there and fight with them. Like, I'm an edge case in that scenario. Okay. There are a few more edge cases now with like what happened with the Freedom Convoy. There are now more people that understand, actually my money in my bank's not super in my control. And every single human being in Afghanistan understands that can happen. Every single human being in Russia understands what happens when you are at the helm of a government. Whether or not you trust or trusted the government is irrelevant, because the fiat money system is great until it's not. And when it's like being at the ocean. If you're in a boat and you have a beautiful day, being at the ocean is fantastic until it's like a storm rolls in and you got 80-foot waves that your little canoe can't really navigate. And like, there are smart things that you can do. Like, don't go in the ocean with the canoe. Yeah, that's one thing. Look at the weather patterns, but like in the same respect, look at the weather patterns of our government, of any government, right? Like, is it a secret that Putin was going that way, right? Was the writing on the wall that Afghanistan was going to get taken over? And what about Canada? What about the USA? What writing is on the wall for a government that may or may not want to own and control you and your money? I don't know.
I'm with you, man. I mean, they just last week or this week, they started grabbing guns from the people, right? I mean, that's another step. Disarm the population.
For your protection, homie. Everything's done for you.
Hey, that's right. They're looking out for me. Isn't that great?
You don't need to eat meat for your protection.
That's right.
You don't want to drive a car that can go more than 400 kilometers for your protection.
Yeah, we wouldn't want you going too far. You have to come back for your bug-based dessert, Right. But, I know.
Your lab-made protein.
Matt, we're on the precipice of going into a very dark second half of our life, or second 2/3 of yours and I lives. And I just wonder, I guess, not to go too hard, but when you are stepping away from Bitcoin or stepping away from life in general, and it's coming to the end, what do you hope to have accomplished for your children and for these generations after you? Like, can you through Bitcoin make a difference?
Yeah, 100%, man. It's a world where they can interact with Bitcoin themselves. I think that it is so, so, so crucial that it is easy to use Bitcoin globally, period. And if I can play a small part in that, that is like mission accomplished.
Beautiful, man. What is the first thing that I should do if I want to get into Bitcoin? Like, what's number one?
Go to bitcoinwell.com/learn. Take the Bitcoin Academy. Not just the Bitcoin Academy though. Like, take that with a grain of salt and then learn otherwise. Second is read the Bitcoin Standard. It's an author, Saifedean. It's by far the #1 book in the space. It's technical. It's tough read. But once taking the Bitcoin Academy is largely based on the Bitcoin Standard.
Okay.
And the Bitcoin Standard kind of brings it to that next level from there. And then third is just try it. Download a free mobile wallet, like the Well wallet, and go buy $20 in Bitcoin. Go buy $10 in Bitcoin. Send it to a friend. Have a friend buy $10 in Bitcoin and send it to you. Make 2 wallets. Get a hardware wallet. Yeah. Just play with Bitcoin. Just learn it. Understand it. The same way that when you're a kid, you draw with the markers, you color outside the line, you rip paper. Do that with inconsequential amounts of money, and then dive in, and then 2.1% of your net worth and a subsequent savings amount after that.
Well, that's awesome. Now, let's just say, because there is, well, let's say I want a little bit more assistance or a bit more of a helping hand. Does Bitcoin Well offer like some kind of support that way?
Yeah, big time. So we've identified that exact niche, I think. And so both online or at our offices in Edmonton and Calgary, you can set up an appointment. Bitcoin specialists Bitcoin specialists will meet you, answer all your questions, help you set up a hardware wallet, help you set up a mobile wallet, and sell you Bitcoin. And really make sure that you're comfortable with the transaction. Maybe you get a coffee or a bubbly. We're a big bubbly shop.
Nice.
We like our soda water here. But you sit down and you learn how to use Bitcoin. You ask, and then you develop a relationship, right? Like, our Bitcoin specialists have relationships, and if you're like, hey, I got this Bitcoin, I'm kind of stuck here, what should I be doing here? You call a Bitcoin specialist and they help you out.
That's wonderful. I just wanted to ask a couple more things. With the hardware wallet, is it wireless, or do I plug that in every so often and make that transfer? Or how does that work?
So the hardware wallet is how you interact with the Bitcoin that you have. So if you want to send or spend that Bitcoin, you need to plug the hardware wallet into a device. And then how it works is half of the transaction is made on the device and half the transaction is made on the browser. And so if your browser is compromised, it's fine because your hardware wallet isn't. And if your hardware wallet's compromised, it's fine because your browser isn't. And if both are compromised, damn. Well, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't get phished and lose your hardware wallet to the same person. That would really suck.
That would not be okay.
But yeah, so it's like a little device that you plug into your computer. You make a transaction on the browser, you confirm it on the hardware wallet, and then off it goes.
Understood. Well, you know what I thought was really interesting, just as a final thought, was I saw that you have a Bitcoin ATM in the Remedy coffee shop somewhere. What is that?
Yes, sir. Remedy's been an amazing partner for us for the last few years. They've got phenomenal chai, but
yes, they do.
But also, they sell Bitcoin, and then that's a nice thing. So yeah, man, you can go down there, you can buy Bitcoin. It takes about 8 to 10 seconds from the time you push send Bitcoin to the Bitcoin being sent, and it's a pretty good move. And
did they reach out to you to get an ATM in there?
Yes and no. So they I actually forget how the full relationship started, but they had a Bitcoin ATM that then left. And then I think they reached out and said, hey, we had a Bitcoin ATM, but it's no longer here. Can we put yours in? And that's when it started. It was like 2016, 2017 area.
The future is here.
Future is here, man. The sound money is here.
The sound money future. Adam, thanks so much, dude. This was a blast of information that I couldn't have asked for more. I hope you enjoyed it as well. It was good to finally connect, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and thank you for connecting. And looking forward to maybe we'll grab a chai and buy some Bitcoin one day.
I'm into that. It's going to happen sooner than later. This summer, I'm getting on the wave of non-custodial Bitcoin living.
My man.
All right.
My man.
All right, Adam. Take care, buddy. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Patrick. Cheers.
Thank you for watching this episode of the North Bank Media Podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel below, give this episode a thumbs up, and feel free to leave a comment. Also, make sure you find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all at North Bank Media Podcast. And if you yourself have a story about how you became or are becoming yourself, finding purpose, finding meaning in how you live your life and in what you do, reach out to us. We'd love to hear your story and talk with you on the show. I'm Patrick Strevens, and until next time, thank you again for watching.